Welcome to the Tradies in Business podcast. Join your host, Nicole Cox, as she dives into the real stories, tips, secrets, and stuff-ups from guests both inside and outside the trade world. Nick is here to help you break free from the grind, reduce money stress, and build a trade business that truly works for you. So grab a brew, put your phone on silent, and get ready to be inspired.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Tradies in Business podcast. I have a different kind of guest for you today. He's a young fella. You know how much I love having a young fella on the show, and he's not afraid of giving it a go, but he's got a really interesting story. Joel, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time today.
No worries at all. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Joel, tell us a bit about your story. So for transparency, everyone, we're going to be talking about property investment and a shortcut. Well, maybe not a shortcut, but the available opportunities for particularly tradies and trade business owners and what we're still able to do despite what the budget is threatening us all with at the moment. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Joel's had a really interesting and a very relatable journey into what he's doing with the property tradies and Tommy. So Joel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So to give some backstory on a plumber, past plumber.
Mm-hmm.
So when I left school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And basically the first year out of school, I spent working as a labourer doing roof tile removing because I had no idea what I wanted to do as a career. So basically we would take all of the roof tiles off roofs that were being demolished, put them on pallets, and then we would sell them to roof tile yards. So my friend started that business and he'd be at uni 3 days a week. I'd be running the ship and learning things. And then about a year later, I got offered a plumbing apprenticeship in the union in Melbourne. If anyone out there understands the union industry in Melbourne, it is quite well paid. So I was fortunate enough to get that offer and decided to take it. And then from there, I basically spent the next 4 years doing my apprenticeship. But through that time, also started my own trades business with my best mate and business partner now, Brody. So he comes from an electrical background, and we started our own home security camera installation business during COVID called Certified CCTV. So I've always been super interested in business, making money, and then that transitioned into property investing as well. So basically throughout that COVID timeline, I was working massive hours, 60-hour weeks on the tours, and then Brady and myself with the side business. After work and weekends, we would take probably anywhere from 2 to 3 jobs on top of that. We marketed ourselves through Facebook groups and got a really good response. And just worked as much as we could. And basically had the epiphany and through listening to podcasts as I was working, when you've got 60, 70-hour weeks, there's plenty of time to listen and soak in knowledge. I started learning about property investing. So decided then to spend the time figuring out how I can start buying property and where to buy and how to strategize and build a property portfolio. So at 22, I created a plan with a mortgage broker that I found and an accountant and bought my first property. I was very fortunate at the time that my dad went guarantor on the loan. So for all the listeners out there that don't know what a guarantor loan is, basically if you've got a family member or a parent that's willing to put up equity out of their property to guarantee your deposit, you can virtually buy a property without having to put up any money. You can add the stamp duty to the loan. You don't have to put up any deposit, and you basically only have to pay the building and pest inspections, conveyancing fees, lending fees. So you're looking at $5,000 to get in. But of course, you are taking on quite a high amount of debt with that purchase. But the reason I did that and the reason why I went with the guarantor loan was because in that time frame, doing my apprenticeship and the side business, I had about $90,000 saved. And I had spoke with the broker and knew that I had capacity to buy a second property virtually straight away. So basically, as soon as I settled on that first property, bought number 2. and I was broke. Had no money at the time. I used every cent I had. I was still living at home with mum and dad, and only just moved out recently, actually, to build my property portfolio. But those two properties basically set me up to then build where I'm at today with a 5 property portfolio.
Joel, I'm impressed. Your parents have done a great job, might I say. They've clearly brought you up with a great open mind. They've instilled a brilliant work ethic into you, and clearly you're a hungry young man. That's quite
Yes.
a portfolio to have at your age.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. Not everyone gets the opportunity to have parents that look after them and want them to succeed. But I guess I always viewed it that if my parents are going to sacrifice and give me everything that I need, it would be a disgrace to what they've provided me to not get the best out of myself.
They have done a very good job. All right, let's talk about that transition. So, what are you doing now? Is it strictly working with tradies to help build their portfolio, or are you doing a little bit of a few things, Joel?
Yes, correct. Virtually strictly working with tradies, FIFO workers, trades business owners, helping them build their portfolios. I guess with my background and relatability to tradies, that's exactly why we decided to focus on working with them. And when I started learning about property investing and listening to podcasts, there was nothing out there that spoke directly to tradies, which is why we've also recently started our own property investing podcast only for tradies as well.
Love it. So tell me, what do you think tradies are getting wrong about property investing? Because there's a lot of them that give it a go. They have a bit of a gamble and they don't always get it right. What do you think what do you think they're getting wrong?
The the key one is buying in the wrong locations. I
Mhm,
think a lot of traders that I do speak to, and I see the mistakes happen all the time. Um, the amount of research that they do into to where they should buy and why is very limited. They
mhm,
might speak to a friend, family member, or see news headlines and decide to buy there. A great example of this is I spoke to 2 tradies last week that had just bought house and land packages in Perth. And I bought my first property there, and in a 4-year period, that's grown by 120%.
mhm,
So when we're looking at investing into property, we want to avoid the markets that have grown substantially over recent times because once the affordability for locals becomes super stretched, they
mhm,
can't continue to keep paying more. So I think the key thing is location, buying in their own backyard and thinking that, okay, cool, because I can see the property, I know the area, I can maybe do some renovations. That's going to be the best use of my skills as a tradie. But the way I view it is location does 80-90% of the heavy lifting. There's over
mhm.
15,000 suburbs in the country. So that should be the first point. And then if you are willing to go over, maybe take a week or two off and do some minor works, that's where you're going to get the biggest leverage in building a portfolio and beating the market in my eyes.
Mm. So how do you figure that out? Because that sounds like, actually, it sounds quite confronting and scary for someone to do when they don't necessarily have that knowledge. So clearly, some support in that is the best way to do it. But in terms of um, doing that research, what kind of indicators are you looking for?
Mm, great question. So, uh, some really key ones are affordability.
Mhm,
So we want to be investing into markets where it's affordable for the locals, so that we
mhm,
know that as more people move to the area and it also has a strong economy, people then can pay more for property. If you're buying into an area like we're seeing in the high end of Sydney at the moment, where you have some tax changes, you have some interest rate rises, and they're already at the cap of the affordability, then that's usually when markets go backwards in price. So
mm,
that's a really good starting point to look at. If you combine the affordability and looking into the economy, so low unemployment, you want it to have a diversified industries of employment. You don't want it to be too heavily reliant on one sector
yep.
because if that does fall off, you're setting yourself up for failure. You combine them with low growth in recent years. That's a really good starting point.
Mhm.
There is a lot more that goes into it. But if you do that at a bare minimum, I think you will put yourself in a better position than if you didn't.
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that I see as an opportunity for trades, well, maybe prior to the budget, is
Mhm.
buying a house that we can do up and either hold for a period of time or sell. Either way, I think has been a profitable model up until this point, at least. But I don't know that that's necessarily the smart decisions to make. Particularly talking about or thinking about what you've just referenced, Joel. There might be other opportunities that we're missing to purchase something like a new home or a townhouse, for example, that is already built or built by a volume builder for us because the growth in that could be more significant than something that we do as a flip.
Look, I still think that's a great strategy as long as you got the location right. With our
Mhm.
business, we only buy established property. So we avoid house and land packages. We want to maximize land content and get into an established area. When you're buying a house and land package, and what I think will happen as well with these new tax changes, if they do get passed, the average mum and dad investor is going to start buying house and land packages. Developers will smell blood and they'll start creating new suburbs that don't have the infrastructure built out. You'll have areas that are owned 70% by investors. There's not going to be that owner-occupier demand. And a super important thing to note about the new budget is you'll get the negative gearing benefits, but the person that you sell to doesn't.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't have that appeal in the future and price growth, well, you're buying at a premium, but then you're not going to be able to sell at that premium.
I couldn't agree with you more, Joel. Couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
Okay, so thinking about we might talk business owners for a moment.
Yes.
At what stage in a business owner's journey do you think they should start thinking about purchasing property? Now you're going to tell me straight away because you were 22 when you bought your first one. But let's think about a typical business owner where their cash flow is quite strapped and quite short in the beginning. Everything they're investing in is going straight back into the business. Should they be thinking early, or do you think that there needs to be a level of stability before they start to consider?
Great question. I'm, I guess, doing my first lending and buying now being a business owner.
Hmm.
So I think it's super important to be on top of your finances before you start to look at investing. Now, a key thing as well is if you're looking to purchase a property using earnings from your business within 12 months of being in operation, you're going to have to do what you call a low doc loan. So basically, that's a high risk loan in the eyes of the banks or the lender that you're going with, which means you have to pay quite a high interest rate.
Mhm.
So if you are strapped for cash flow, that's probably not the best route to go. So if you can get a really good 12 months of financials under your belt, and set yourself up with some buffers, I think that's going to be the really good starting point to look at
Mm.
investing into property because you're going to get a sharper rate and you've got some buffer there if things do change within the business or the property market.
Sage advice, Joel. I'm impressed. Okay. What do you think a good property investor looks like?
Or are we talking? Look,
Habits,
I think,
behaviors, maybe some financial
yeah,
disciplines?
great question. I see a plethora of different investors, and I think the best ones that I see they focus on their business and income first. They
Mm,
focus on what they can control
mhm.
because you're going to be able to build a bigger portfolio if you keep focusing on building your business and building your income. So I think the best investors focus on buying undervalued properties in undervalued markets, focusing on building their income so they can lend more money and then utilizing some of that cash to do works and increase the equity on the property. Um, of course, you can do major works, but I think this is where business owners can get it wrong.
Mm,
They buy a property that needs a shit ton of work. It takes away from the operation that they're running with their business,
mhm.
and it can be a massive distraction.
Couldn't agree more. Again, I also feel like we often make decisions based on emotion. And I think when it comes to this is an entirely business decision and it's one you're more separated from. So it doesn't even need to hold the emotion like making decisions for your own business, even though I might be preaching to you not that none of it's personal. We don't need to hold it quite so close. But I think in a case like this, when it comes to building a property portfolio or even just making that very first investment, it needs to be a strategic decision, not one made based on emotion. I think this is a good suburb. I think this is a good position. I could use my skills to do this. That doesn't necessarily guarantee you the outcome that you're looking for. There's a mathematical science behind making these decisions, right?
Mhm. Oh, most definitely.
Yep.
And it's going to be working back from your goals, of
Mm.
course. If you're in a position where you want to buy 2 or 3 properties in 3 years, you can't go in blindly with that first purchase because if you don't sit down with a broker and you don't sit down with an accountant and say, okay, which entity are we buying this property in? How are we getting lending for property number two? Then you could easily go out, buy that first property and then cap yourself out straight away. So this is why you need to treat your property portfolio like you treat your business. That's a really, I guess, key point in what I see in the best investors. They treat their property portfolio like their business because
Yeah,
it is.
totally. Yep, it is. You're right. Is there a preferred structure for a business to have prior to looking at investing? So, are we talking a company? Are we talking a trust, even though so much of that's about to change? Is there a preferred structure that you guys like people to have, or do you think that it can be worked on regardless of structure?
Like, I don't like to get too deep into talking about structures because I'm not a qualified accountant. So I'll leave it to that. I can only talk from my experience, which I guess I have gone down the route of my last three properties purchasing within trusts. The reason I did this, and again, this is based off of the old tax laws, so don't go out and do this right away. But the reason being is um, if if I was able to get a property positively geared within a trust, it would mean the lending that I used from the banks on those properties wouldn't be taken into account on my next purchase, meaning that I can buy again. So for business owners, which I am, is you're buying properties, or I've bought properties in different entities, and I'm working towards getting them to pay for themselves, so then I can keep buying more property.
Mm. I think it can't be understated that this needs to be a team effort. It's not something that I would advocate for any one person to do on their own. You need your accountant, you need your broker, you need things like buyer's agents and people to do research for you. And there's usually a formula that can be followed. Like this is a rinse and repeat activity if you get it right. But the risk of doing it on your own can be quite challenging. And you referenced something that I should have picked up on before, Joel. I think it absolutely needs to start with your end goal. But just like any other conversation we have with the people in our team, they need to be really aware of where we're trying to get and what time frame so that they can advise you accordingly.
Yes. And a lot of the time conversations are about, bringing expectations down or bringing expectations up. A lot of people, because you haven't run the numbers or where your business sits when you're working every day in your business, it's very hard to get a clear understanding as to where you sit in the big scheme of things. So it's super important to have those, I guess, maybe confronting conversations, whether it's, okay, your goals are here, you should be here, or your goals are here, you should be here. And then because it's very easy to get disheartened if you've set the bar too high and then you can't achieve it. So it's about setting achievable goals and then having the right team to be able to put them in place.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Okay, let's talk about the market and what you're seeing at the moment. We had a good chat off air. There's some, there's some temptation, I think. Well, you referenced it before. We would think that things like Perth and Brisbane would be great growth opportunities. I reckon you're going to have a different opinion there, Joel. How about you share what you're seeing in the market?
Yeah. I mean, look, if we look in a very short term lens in the next year or two, Perth and Brisbane are probably going to be some of the best performers. But when we're investing into property, we don't want to have a 1 to 2 year timeline. We want to have a 5-10 year timeline and make sure that we're getting into the markets that are going to give us the runway to have as much growth as possible. So I own property personally in Perth and Queensland, and we're not buying there for clients anymore because we went through it on a recent podcast that we did, but the affordability of those states is now getting very stretched, meaning that locals can't continue to keep paying more for property. And you have things like tax changes, interest rate changes that come in, and that's where you can get the market to flatline for a period of time. So while you do have, I guess, stronger governments and maybe more infrastructure coming in, especially with Brisbane and the Olympics, if people can't physically afford to pay more for property, it's not like it can just keep growing at the rate that it has in previous years.
No, in my local area, we've seen a $70,000 drop in the last month. It's amazing how quickly the market has shifted. And I think that but this goes to speaking to having that team. If you don't have that team in place, it's very easy to overpay for a property or to purchase in the wrong spot, like you're talking about. You really need some good advisors because this isn't your home. This isn't about purchasing for where you're going to live and to make you feel great. This is actually about making a smart business decision. So it's very different indeed. Um, Joel, if I was considering this, what would be my very best first step?
Or very blessed first step, considering wanting to purchase an investment property.
Yeah.
I would always say, first off, have a chat with your mortgage broker and your accountant. So before coming to a buyer's agent like myself and getting ahead of things and talking about locations and where to buy, you need to see whether or not you can actually purchase a property.
Mhm.
And your accountant and mortgage broker will be able to sit down with you and break down all the figures. And they'll be able to tell you, yep, cool, you're ready to purchase. You've got the money available. You've got the borrowing capacity. Or no, we need another 3 to 6 months of BASs, and we need you to make another 50,000 to cover a deposit, or your income's too low. So that's going to be the best starting point.
Mhm.
And of course, making sure that you have the right mortgage broker and accountant on your team.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Again, Joel, let's talk about buyer's agents because I think it's one of those areas of the market's a bit like business coaches. Everybody knows a buyer's agent or everybody knows someone that's had an experience for one, and they're not always positive experiences. So tell our listeners that don't necessarily know, what does a buyer's agent do, and then how do we choose a good one?
Mhm. So, a buyer's agent, the easiest way to think about it is we're on the other side of uh, the equation to a selling agent. So, anything that a selling agent does, we do the complete opposite for the buyer. So, that the selling agent's trying to get the best price for their seller, the best terms and conditions, and sell the property as quick as possible. We're trying to buy a property as cheap as possible in the best market and negotiate the best terms for our
Mm.
clients.
Do you get paid a commission or is there a flat fee?
So, we do a flat fee.
Great. I think this is important for our listeners to hear. Um,
Yes.
how do you choose a good buyer's agent then?
That's a great question. So, key things I would look for is understanding how many people a buyer's agent is working with at one time.
Oh, that's a good one.
With getting into the property market, if a buyer's agent takes 6 to 12 months to purchase your property because they're
Mm.
working with 50 or 100 other clients, well, you're going to miss out on quite a lot of growth. And if you're paying them a fee, you want to be able to transact in a reasonable period of time.
Mhm.
I would also understand what their property portfolio looks like. Are
Mhm.
they invested themselves? And who do they work with? And what is their investing philosophy?
That's a great point. Do you think that, oh, this is a leading question.
Mhm.
In my experience with the buyer's agents that I've worked with previously, they've been very location dependent.
Mm.
But I think they've all been for purchasing homes. I think when we're talking about investments, we need somebody that has Australia-wide experience, right?
Yes, 100%. So
Mhm.
we've got two sides to our business. We've got a home buying side, which works in the inner southeast of Melbourne, and
Mhm.
they specifically work in those pockets. And then on the investment side, we buy Australia wide. I don't think you can run a successful buyer's agency business in the investment side if
Mhm.
you're not looking at all the markets
Mm.
across Australia, because you can look at Perth in recent years compared to Melbourne, and if you were working with an investment focused buyer's agency in 2021 in Melbourne, well, you would have missed out on a lot of growth in Perth.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Okay, Joel, what's next for the property tradies and Tommy? Where to from here?
Great question. Recently, we've started our podcast, the Property Tradies podcast, teaching tradies everything we know about investing and getting professionals on within the industry that talk directly to them and work with them every day. So building the podcast. And another exciting thing that I'm working on at the moment is I'm a part of the Tools Down Financial Education group. So we've created a group of myself, a buyer's agent, mortgage broker, financial advisor, and accountant, and
Right.
we're doing site talks to tradies and FIFO workers specifically. So in July, we're going out to 3 mining sites
Mhm.
in Queensland,
Mhm.
doing some talks on site, and then also talks at the pub as well. I've been a tradie in the past, and I know what toolbox talks are like. No one gives a shit. So we wanted to do it differently to everyone else and meet them at a pub and yeah, just be able to have a chat and meet
Yeah.
face to face.
Some of our most successful events have been in a pub, Joel. My tradies love a pub. So do I.
There
Can't
you
lie.
go. Exactly right. It's a space where you feel safe. You don't feel like everyone's looking at you talking when you're out on site.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's a bit more intimate.
Yeah, you can have intimate conversations and not everybody can eavesdrop in, right?
Exactly right.
Which is important when we're talking about financials.
No.
Awesome. Joel, if our listeners, and I encourage them to do this, would like to learn more about what you guys are up to, where can they find you?
So you can find us on Instagram at the Property Tradies, also on YouTube and Spotify for the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and in our bio on Instagram, and also in the description of each video for the podcast, there's a booking link if you're wanting to have a call with me and have a conversation about your position and potentially purchasing an investment property.
We'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes for anybody that's listening. And I do encourage you to reach out to Joel and his team. I'm very impressed with the conversation and the knowledge that Joel has demonstrated today. And I think there's a great opportunity for us as business owners. The financial market at the moment and the doom and gloom around the budget and all of the shit that is going on in the world could have us tempted to hide and not be thinking about the opportunities available to us. But I think this is the best time for educated business owners to be looking ahead rather than getting stuck right now. And the key to some of those decisions are people like Joel. Joel, thank you so much for being here. I've really enjoyed it.
No worries, Nick. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
You've been listening to Tradies in Business podcast with Nicole Cox. Find out more about today's guest, tools for your trade business, and other cool stuff at tradiesinbusiness.com.au.